Welcome to Horror House.
The furnace room was supposed to be sealed. The theater building on campus was old. Real old. The kind of place where the lights flickered in the hallways, and the air smelled like a mix of dust, old wood, and something metallic, like iron rusting quietly. Most students avoided it, but as the overnight janitor, it was my domain. Empty halls, locked classrooms, and me making sure no one else was wandering around. There was one place I was never supposed to go. The furnace room in the basement. It was sealed off years ago, they said, because of asbestos or some old accident. The door was heavy steel with a big red "Do Not Enter" sign. Maintenance swore it was unsafe, but I heard things. It started on my second week. Just little noises at first. A soft thud here, a faint scrape there. I figured it was rats or the building settling, but the noises weren't random. They had a rhythm, like footsteps pacing, slow and deliberate. Just beyond the door, I remember standing outside that door one night, the only light coming from my flashlight. The hallway was silent, except for my breathing and the faint buzz of the old fluorescent lights overhead. The metal door looked cold and unmoving, but sometimes I swear I could hear something scratching against it, like someone trying to get out. One night, I noticed a faint warmth seeping through the door's edges. It was odd because the furnace was supposed to be shut off. The building's heat came from a newer system on the roof. This old furnace was dead. Curiosity gnawed at me. I checked the old campus records the next day. The furnace room had been closed in 1999, after a maintenance accident that never got much detail in the files, but there was a brief note about someone going missing that same year. A maintenance worker named Elliot. After that, the room was boarded up and locked tight. The thought of someone missing in a sealed basement room haunted me. I imagined the worst, a guy trapped or worse. But the records showed no body found, no investigation. Just case closed. Over the next few nights, the noises got louder. Footsteps, scraping, low hums that sounded like whispered voices, just on the edge of hearing. Sometimes, I caught the faint smell of something strange, like burnt metal mixed with damp earth. I started bringing my phone to record the sounds. When I played them back during the day, all I could hear were faint thuds and occasional creaks. Nothing solid. Then, one night, I heard a soft tapping, rhythmic, steady, coming from the vent beside the furnace door. It was almost like a Morse code. Pause. I pressed my ear to the vent. The air was cold and stale. Then I heard it. A low breath. Not a person's breath exactly, but something shallow, deliberate. My heart raced. What if someone was really inside? After all these years? I told the campus security. They laughed it off. Old buildings make noises, they said. Probably a raccoon or something. But I knew it wasn't animals. The noises had pattern. They were intentional. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out the bolt cutters I kept for emergencies and tried the lock. It was rusted, but after a few hard pulls, the lock gave way with a sharp snap. The door creaked open to darkness. Inside was thick dust and cold air that smelled like forgotten years. I switched on my flashlight. Rows of old pipes curled along the walls, dripping water somewhere in the shadows. The furnace was still there, silent, cold, but strangely, there was something else. Near the back wall, I saw footprints in the dust, fresh footprints, bare feet. I swallowed hard. Was I imagining this? Then I saw the edge of a blanket folded carefully in the corner, next to a rusted toolbox. Someone had been living here. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. A faint scraping noise came from deeper in the room. I stepped forward. Then, right before I could reach the corner, The door slammed shut behind me. Cold air rushed in from all sides, and the tapping began again. Soft, steady, echoing around me. The door slammed shut behind me like a trap snapping shut. For a moment, I just stood there, my heart hammering so loud I thought it might burst through my chest. The faint tapping echoed from somewhere deep in the shadows. Steady, slow, deliberate. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from. But it wasn't random. It had purpose. I turned my flashlight back on, the beam cutting through the thick dust hanging in the air. The smell of rust and old stone was heavier now, almost suffocating. My breath came out in quick clouds. The blanket lay folded in the corner. I moved closer, curious but terrified. It was old, frayed at the edges, but clean. Someone had clearly been here not long ago. I ran my fingers over the fabric, almost soft, but with a faint smell of smoke mixed with something metallic. I scanned the room again. The footprints in the dust, bare footprints, led past the furnace and disappeared into a small crawl space behind a stack of crates. That crawl space was too small for an adult, but I didn't care. I had to know. I squeezed through the narrow opening, my heart pounding so hard it filled my ears. Inside, the air was colder, damper. The light barely reached past a few feet. My flashlight flickered again, and then I heard it. A whisper, not loud but close. "Help me." My skin prickled. I swallowed and forced myself forward, the walls closing in on me. Suddenly, I stumbled onto something soft. A small bundle of papers, yellowed and brittle, tied with a faded ribbon. I picked them up, heart racing. They were old journal pages. Someone had written in here, desperate, frantic handwriting. They told a story about the furnace room, about hidden things no one was supposed to find. The writer mentioned a worker who disappeared years ago. Not Elliot, but someone else. Someone who uncovered something dangerous in the basement. The journal warned of secret meetings, threats whispered in the dark, and a terrible mistake that had sealed the furnace room forever. I sat there, holding the papers, realizing the cold case wasn't just about a missing worker. It was about a cover-up. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. A long silence filled the crawl space. Then the door at the end of the furnace room, the one I hadn't noticed, creaked open slowly. I froze. A narrow hallway stretched out, dimly lit by a flickering bulb. Something moved just beyond the light. I stepped back, heart pounding, trying to decide if I should run or see this through. Then, a voice. Soft, low, and oddly familiar, whispered my name. I turned to the exit, but the furnace door slammed shut again. Trapped. And then, in the darkness, the voice spoke one last chilling line. "You shouldn't have come back." The conference room clock. You ever notice how some sounds stick with you? The kind that don't quite make sense, but you hear them again and again, like they're trying to tell you something. For me, it was the ticking. I worked the night shift as a janitor in this old corporate office building downtown. It's the kind of place where the walls hold decades of secrets. The fluorescent lights buzz softly, and the hum of the HVAC is a constant companion. Most nights it's just me in this silence. There's this one conference room on the second floor, room 204. It's been sealed off for years, supposedly because of renovations that never happened. No one goes near it, but every night, as I mop the hallway just outside, I hear it. A steady, slow ticking coming from behind that locked door. Here's the weird part. There's an old clock mounted high on the wall inside that room. It's the kind that would usually dominate the space, but everyone says it stopped working years ago. The hands frozen at exactly 3:15. But that ticking, it's real. It gets louder the closer I get. Sometimes I swear I hear whispers too. Soft, almost like someone murmuring just out of earshot. Last week, curiosity got the better of me. I leaned close to the glass window on the door, shining my flashlight inside. The clock's hands hadn't moved, but the ticking echoed sharp and clear. The air near that door always feels colder too, like the warmth just drains away. I can see my breath sometimes, even in spring. One night, I found something taped right beneath the clock on the wall, a yellowed newspaper clipping. I peeled it off carefully, heart pounding. It was an article from nearly 40 years ago, about a scandal at the company. Several employees fired suddenly, rumors of corruption, and a whistleblower who mysteriously vanished. The headline read, "Whistleblower's warning silenced. Investigation closed." I stuffed the clipping into my pocket and stepped back, suddenly feeling like I shouldn't be there. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps pacing just beyond the door. But I was alone on the entire floor. I froze, listening as the steps stopped. Then, the ticking. Only this time it felt different, like the clock was moving backward. The hands were still frozen at 3:15, but the ticking was faster, almost frantic. I walked away, my skin crawling, but I couldn't shake the feeling. What if someone inside that room was still waiting to be heard? And what if the ticking was a warning I hadn't figured out yet? I didn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking about that ticking. And the article. Who was the whistleblower? What happened to them? The next evening I came in early. The building was mostly empty. As usual, I brought the clipping back with me, flattened it on the break room table, and read it again under the harsh white lights. The article mentioned a name. E. Rourke. A mid-level auditor who'd claimed the company had been falsifying financial reports. He'd spoken to someone on record, then vanished 2 weeks later. Official story said he resigned, but the article hinted otherwise, that he'd tried to meet with someone in room 204 on the night he disappeared. That same conference room. Something in me cracked. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe just years of routine breaking down. But I had to know what was in that room. I had the keys to almost every space in the building, all but one, room 204. But I remembered the maintenance supervisor kept an old key box in the utility closet on the top floor. After making sure no one was around, I slipped the master key from the lockbox and headed back down. The hallway outside 204 felt colder than ever. I swear, the ticking grew louder the closer I got. Not fast, but rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Tick, tick, tick. The key slid into the lock with a click, and the door creaked open. The air inside was still and stale, like a place sealed off from time. The long glass table was covered in a thin layer of dust. Faded executive chairs sat perfectly arranged, untouched. And on the far wall, the clock. Its hands were still stuck at 3:15, but the ticking was loud now. Close, alive. Then I saw it. An old leather briefcase on the table. No dust on it, like someone had just placed it there. I opened it slowly. Inside were files, dozens of them. Company records, memos, financial ledgers, all stamped with red ink. Confidential, all signed by E. Rourke. And there, a journal. A page was marked with a paperclip. I flipped to it and read, "They know." I saw it in the numbers, in the discrepancies no one else bothered to check. I don't think they'll let me leave the building. If anything happens to me, the truth is in this room. Room 204. The clock doesn't lie. Time keeps score. That's when the lights flickered. Then came the sound. A slow dragging noise across the floor, like someone pulling a chair back. Only, I hadn't moved anything. I turned toward the end of the table, and one of the chairs had shifted. Then, another. The whispers returned. Closer this time. Words I couldn't quite make out, overlapping, hushed. My breath was visible now, fogging in the air. I backed toward the door. That's when the clock ticked once. A sharp, clear click. The hands had moved. Just a bit. Backwards. 3. 14. And then the door slammed shut. I dropped the files. Ran to the knob. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, the ticking grew frantic, as if the room itself was unraveling. Time melting backward. And in the glass reflection of the clock, just behind my shoulder, I saw a figure, not moving, just standing there, watching. The lights cut out completely. I felt the room breathe. When I came to, the door was open again. It was morning, and the clock was gone. No one believed me. No one even remembered room 204. They said it had been sealed off for decades. No access, no maintenance records, not even a listing in the floor directory. I tried showing the clipping, the files, but they were gone too. Even the paper I'd taken, missing from my locker. And yet, sometimes, when I work late, and the building gets quiet again, I hear it. Just behind the walls. Time doesn't forget, and neither do they. The journal beneath the floorboards. I moved into the house on Willow Lane because I needed quiet. After the breakup, the noise of the city felt like it was pressing in on me. So I packed up my life into a U-Haul and drove until the air felt still. I found this place by chance. An old one-story home just outside a forgotten Oregon town, nestled between pine trees that seemed to whisper when the wind moved right. It was cheap, suspiciously cheap, but I figured it was just the age of the place. The realtor said it had been vacant for years, said the previous owner had moved on. He left it at that. The house creaked more than I liked. Cold spots in the hallway. Lights that flickered sometimes but worked fine when I checked the wiring. It had quirks, sure, but nothing that couldn't be explained. At least, not at first. I spent my first week repainting the bedroom. I wanted it to feel like mine. The carpet was this faded brown color, probably older than me. One evening, while ripping it up, I noticed something weird. The corner of the wood beneath was slightly lifted, like it had been pried up before. Curious, I grabbed a flathead and gently lifted the board. Beneath it, tucked between insulation and dust, was a small cloth-bound journal. It was old. Faded blue cover, pages yellowed at the edges. A name was written inside the first page. Hannah Clark, 1998. I sat down on the floor and started reading. At first, it read like any teenage girl's diary. School drama. Parents not understanding. A crush on someone named Derek. But then the tone started to shift. Slowly. Like a storm building in the distance. June 12th, 1998. I heard footsteps in the attic again. Dad says it's just the house settling. But it only happens at night, and only when I'm alone. June 18th, 1998. Someone left my closet door open again. I always close it. Always. I'm not imagining it. June 24th, 1998. Last night I woke up and my window was open. I know I locked it. I felt cold air on my face and I swear I heard breathing. Not mine. I kept flipping pages. It felt wrong to keep reading, but I couldn't stop. There was something painfully real about her fear. Something I recognized in my own chest, though I didn't understand why yet. The last entry was dated July 2nd, 1998. It said, "He comes through the walls. I can hear him when the house is quiet. I don't think anyone believes me. But tonight, I think he's going to take me. If you find this, please don't sleep in this room. He's in the house." That was the last line. The rest of the page was blank. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I believed it, not fully, but because something in her voice, those desperate handwritten words, got under my skin. You know how sometimes you read something, and it doesn't feel like fiction. It feels like someone whispering to you through time? That's what it was. The next morning, I did some digging. I drove down to the local library and found a microfilm scanner. The old woman at the front desk looked surprised when I asked about the year 1998. There was a girl who went missing that summer, she said, like she didn't want to say the name. Hannah Clark? I asked. She nodded slowly. Never found her. She watched me for a moment too long, like she was trying to figure something out. Where'd you hear that name? I found an old box with her name on it. I lied. The local paper had just a brief mention. 17-year-old Hannah Clark went missing from her home on Willow Lane in the early hours of July 3rd. No signs of forced entry. Authorities believe she left voluntarily, though her family disagrees. I scanned it 3 times, trying to understand what I was seeing. I was living in the house she disappeared from. That night, I put the journal in the closet and told myself I was overreacting. Old house, old stories, nothing more. But something changed after I read that last entry. Something shifted. I started waking up at 3:14 a.m. every night. Exactly that time. The room would feel too still, like the air itself was holding its breath. One night, I woke to the sound of something sliding across the floor. Not a thud, not a bump, a deliberate slide. I sat up and looked around. Nothing, until I saw it. The journal. It was in the middle of the bedroom floor. I hadn't touched it in days. I started checking the attic after that, even though I hated it. The pull string light was dim, yellow. Everything up there was covered in plastic sheeting, dust, mouse droppings. But one thing stood out. A vent in the far corner screwed shut, just big enough for someone small to crawl through. I crouched beside it. The screws looked recently disturbed, not rusted over like the rest. And that's when I heard it. From inside the walls, something moved. It was slow, like a hand dragging across wood. I froze, and then from just behind the drywall, a voice whispered, too soft to understand, but definitely real. I backed out of the attic and didn't look back. I called the sheriff's department the next morning, told them I found an old journal linked to a missing girl. I didn't mention the sounds. I knew how that would sound. The deputy took it seriously, surprisingly. Said he'd send someone out. That someone was a man named Detective Wells, mid-50s. Polite, but tired. Said he'd worked the case when he was younger. We never found her, he said, flipping through the journal with latex gloves. But this could be something. Then he looked at me. You said you found this under the bedroom floor. Yeah. He stared at the wall behind me. That's where the family said they last saw her. Standing right there. Before she went to bed and never came out again. That night, I locked my door. I pushed a chair against it, like that would matter. I kept a flashlight under my pillow. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I woke up, not because of a sound, because I felt something breathing, right next to my ear. And when I opened my eyes, the closet door, the one I always kept shut, was open just a crack, and from the darkness behind it, I heard someone whisper, "Did you read it?" I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The voice from the closet was soft, almost kind, but there was something off about it, like it was mimicking comfort, like someone trying to sound gentle, but not knowing how humans actually do that. "Did you read it?" it repeated, from the dark behind the door. I didn't answer. I just reached for the flashlight under my pillow and flicked it on. The light cut through the room like a blade, but the closet was empty, or at least it looked empty. Still, I couldn't bring myself to close the door. I just stared at that crack, waiting until sunrise. The next day I went back to Detective Wells. I told him everything, not just about the journal or the floorboards, but the attic, the vent, the voice. I expected him to laugh or chalk it up to stress, but he didn't. He stared at me for a long time, then said, "I wasn't supposed to say this before, but you should know. Hannah wasn't the only one." I leaned forward. After she went missing, 2 other families lived in that house. The second one, a couple, they broke lease after 6 weeks. Said they heard things at night, that something was living in the walls. The third, the guy disappeared. He looked down. We never found him. I asked him to come to the house, to check the attic. I needed someone else to see the vent, to hear what I'd heard. We went up that evening. The light bulb buzzed overhead. Detective Wells crouched by the corner vent. "This doesn't belong here," he said, tapping it. "This leads into the inner wall cavity." He unscrewed the panel slowly. The air that came out was cold, not musty, cold. He pointed his flashlight inside. There was a space behind the wall, maybe 2 feet wide, but someone small could have fit in there. Someone like Hannah. He reached in with a gloved hand and pulled out something wrapped in fabric. It was a cloth satchel, tied shut with an old leather cord. Inside were 3 things. A Polaroid photo of a young girl, terrified, crouched in what looked like the very same attic. A house key, rusted and bent, and another journal. This one wasn't Hannah's. Different handwriting. More erratic. Unstable. The first page was dated 2001. It read, "She's still here. She knocks on the walls at night. I thought she was gone, but she never left. She wants me to tell. I can't. I can't. I can't." Page after page. Rambling. Obsessive. Repeating the same phrases. I didn't take her. She was already in the walls. I just watched. Then, July 3rd, 2001. 3 years to the day after Hannah went missing. She's in the vent. I saw her eyes. She hasn't aged. She whispers through the floorboards, "I can't sleep. I'm next." That was the last entry. Detective Wells closed the book slowly. This could be the tenant who disappeared. That night, I didn't sleep at the house. I got a motel. I left the journal in the satchel with Wells, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, about what it meant. Hannah didn't run away. Someone had been living inside that house, watching, hiding. But was it just one person? Or was it something else? Because the breathing I heard, it didn't feel like something human. I know that sounds crazy, but when something exhales next to your ear, you just know. You feel it in your bones. A week later, Detective Wells called. He'd done a deeper inspection. Behind that vent, there was a narrow crawl space leading between the walls. At the far end of it, he found what looked like a nest. Blankets, old food wrappers, broken toys, and a makeshift peephole drilled through to the bedroom wall. Someone had been watching the people who lived here for years. But here's the part that never left me. He also found a hidden crawl space door in the basement behind an old water heater, one that led under the house. It was filled with mold, insects, and scattered bones. Small ones, too decayed to identify. Could have been an animal. Could have been something else. No one could say for sure. They sealed the crawl space. The house was condemned for structural safety violations. I didn't go back. I left everything. Clothes, furniture, even my laptop. Some things aren't worth the risk of revisiting. But sometimes I still dream of that house. And in the dream, I'm standing in the hallway, holding Hannah's journal. I hear someone breathing behind the wall. Only this time I can't move. And then I wake up, heart racing, sweat drenched. It's been almost a year now. I've tried to forget. I really have. But last week, I came home from work, and taped to my front door was a piece of old notebook paper. No name, no address, just one line, written in the same shaky handwriting from that second journal. You read it too.